Hi, Josh Garrett from jgarrett.info here. Today I'm going to do a demonstration creating a multi-tap delay effect in Ableton Live using just components that are part of Live, so they're not part of the group that gets added on with Suite. They're just in the basic product, and they don't require any third-party plugins. So a multi-tap delay, if you're familiar with basic channel or deep chord or chain reaction, that kind of dub techno, a multi-tap delay is a ubiquitous part of the sound of those productions. And what it does is it can take a very sort of static and repetitive sound and add dynamics and real rhythmic elements to it and some nuance. So I've got my live set here. And I've got one channel that I'm calling Multitap Delay, and I have no effects in it currently. All I have in the moment is an audio loop of just a synth stab. Okay, so that repeats every 4 beats, and it's just a single synth stab. And then I've got a 909 channel that is just a 909 loop, just to give some context to the sounds. Okay. The other things I've got is I've got 2 standard returns along with it. And what I'm going to do is start building my effect on return A. So there's a couple different ways to build an effects rack. One is just to drag an audio effect rack device into the track that you want to use it in. What this does is it creates an empty container where you can start to build your effect out. In this case, there's also another way, and I'm going to use that other way, which is to start with the effects that you want to use and then group them. So that's usually how I work. So I'm just going to do that. So I'm going to bring in my simple delay, and this is going to be my first building block toward getting my multi-tap delay happening. Okay, so on multi-tap delay on this channel, I'm just going to turn it on, and I'm going to turn on my sends. So you can hear that the simple delay's in now. It's a simple stereo delay, so what it's doing right now is on the left channel, it's the frequency of the echo is every 4 16th notes and every 6 16th notes on the right. I'm going to turn my wetness all the way up to 100. So now that means that the effect is 100% of the audio coming from track A. And I'm going to link these. So now it's effectively a mono delay. The left controls now control both left and right channels. You can also turn off sync and just use millisecond frequency for your delay, but I'm going to keep this synced to keep sort of the rhythmic component of it tied to the beat. Okay, and I'm going to turn the feedback up so we can hear it a bit more. And because it's at 4 16th notes, it's recurring on the beat. So just to change that up a little bit, I'm going to change that to 3. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put an auto filter in front of the simple delay. So right now it's a low pass filter, so it cuts off frequencies above the frequency of the filter. I'm going to change that to a band pass. And what that does is it only allows frequencies within the band that you've selected to go onto the effect. So you can hear that changes the nature of the delay a bit. Okay, so we're still not in multi-tap area. So I'm going to select both of these, the auto filter and the simple delay, and I'm going to group them. I can either do that by selecting Command G or Control G on Windows, or just right-clicking and selecting Group. So what that's done is it's added them to an audio effects rack. So you can see the audio effect rack is now encapsulating this, and this has become a chain within the effect rack. To view the chains, you select the second button down on the audio effect rack here, and there's my first chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this chain, so I can right-click and say duplicate, or use Command D. And I now have 2 instances of the chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the filter on the second one a bit, and maybe I'll set it to 4. So now you can hear I have 2 separate delays happening in here with different frequencies and different delay times. I'm going to duplicate them one more time to get 4 chains. Okay, so on this first one, I'm going to set that to 2. And then on the fourth one, I'll set it to 6 and change the frequency. So you can hear I've got a bit of a rhythm happening here now with this. So if I want to hear what's going on, I'll just turn on the 909 so we can hear it in context with a beat. Okay, so that's cool, kind of groovy. The other thing that's kind of cool to do is to play around with the panning. So each chain has its own pan control. So now we have some movement within the stereo field in the effect. Okay, so one more thing that I'm going to do is within the audio effect itself, I want to be able to tweak the frequencies and the feedback and also the delay time for each chain. So I'm just going to do some MIDI learn here. I collapsed it there for a second. So, okay, so I'm just going to go back to my audio effect rack, and I'm going to start from chain 1, and I'm going to use MIDI learn to map controls or knobs from my controller. So in this case, I'll map frequency 1 for chain 1. I'll select another knob for the frequency of chain 2. Select chain 3, and again set another knob for chain 3. Select chain 4 and a knob for the frequency of chain 4. Then I'll do the same thing coming back to chain 1, and I'm going to affect the delay time. Chain 2, delay time. Chain 3, delay time and another knob. Chain 4, select the delay time and do MIDI learn to add a knob there. And then I would want to do the same thing for feedback. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set one knob for channels 1 or for chains 1 and 2. So select the first chain and the second chain, set feedback to be the same. So up under the MIDI, you can see that 81 controls both of those chains. And then I'm going to set another knob for chains 3 and 4 and keep those paired. Okay, so I can turn my MIDI off. My MIDI assigns, and now I'm going to turn my synth stab back on. Okay, let's select chain 1. So now you can see and just by tweaking some knobs, I can really play with the sound that I'm getting. And of course, I throw the beat under it. Okay, so one thing that you'll notice there is that I'm still getting the dry synth stab along with the effect. Now maybe I want to control how much of the dry synth stab I'm using, and maybe I want more of the effect. And right now, because I'm using a send, I could go in here and with my I/O settings, send this to sends only, but that cuts off all of the dry. And again, each of my chains over here is set to 100%, so I'd have to control each chain. So again, I could affect that by setting a knob to each wet dry, or all of the wet dries to a single knob. But there's another way that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it using another chain, which will be dry, that I can go between the wet and dry of the rack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and instead of being a send effect, I'm going to turn off my send A. I'm going to use that as an insert effect, and I'm now going to drag it into my multi-tap delay channel. And so if I turn that on, I'm only hearing the effect now, because each of these chains has a wet dry of 100%. So they're 100% wet. The effect is 100% of the signal that I'm getting. So I can change that by grouping this audio effect rack. So again, I'm just going to select the audio effect rack, and I can either hit Command G, Control G, or right click and say group. And that puts the audio effect rack within another audio effect rack. So I've got nested effects racks now. So if I turn on the chains here, you can see here that this chain is this audio effect rack. So I'm going to rename this one to multitap. Oh wow, okay. Delay. There we go. And I'm going to rename this chain so that I can keep track of it to multitap delay. And I'm going to add a new chain that's just dry. So right click, create chain, and I'm going to rename this dry. Okay. So now I get basically what I had before. I've got no effects in dry, and I have my multi-tap delay under multi-tap delay. But I want to be able to crossfade between them and adjust the dry-wet balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the chains. So I select chain, and it shows my chain select. Right now both chains are on 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take multi-tap delay, and I'm going to pull it over to 127. And then I'm going to pull that back out to 8. And then I'm going to do the inverse on dry. I'm just going to pull it back over to 120. So now these are within these ranges. And I'm going to select a new knob under MIDI Learn and apply that to my chain select here above the chain select regions. Okay, so you can see that when I move that knob, now the chain selector is moving over the chain select regions. Okay, so what happens when it gets into the regions is it'll be full on. So let me just turn it on. So right now it's dry. Both effects are in as long as I'm in the region where they're both present. And now it's 100% wet over here. But what I want is actually a gradual fade in. So above the region selects here, or the select regions, there's a fade region here. So this little line, you can see as I move it, there's a light blue and a dark blue, and that represents a fade. That represents a fade region. So I'm just going to put both of them at about 100%, around 50. Well, 64. That's 50% of the 128. Okay. So now if I move it, I'll start from dry. So the effect starts to fade in, and the effect's getting louder. Okay, now the effect is all the way in, and the dry is beginning to fade out. And again, everything in this chain is going through this effect. Everything through this chain is going through the dry, no effects. So thanks for joining me for this demo. I hope you got some useful information out of it, and look for some more of my tutorials in the future. Thanks.